This is Michael Ostrolenk. Welcome to our radio, where we explore individual and social transformation through collaborative action. Today's show is brought to you by Cosper Scafidi, an amazing body worker in the Northern Virginia area who has integrated different somatic practices into his work, including Rolfing. To learn more about his work, you can visit his website at www.cosperscafidi.com. Today's guest is Patricia Karnowski, who grew up in a small town near Flint, Michigan. She went to Eastern Michigan University and received a bachelor's degree in women's studies and psychology. Then she went to University of Michigan where she received her master's degrees in clinical psychology. When she was working in New York, right at the time when doctors were prescribing a lot of Prozac and Paxil, she could feel the negative changes in her patients' personalities. She knew they could use some kind of physical help, but this was wrong, she thought. She had been using Chinese medicine herself after giving it a try when she lived in San Francisco. After researching it, she found out that it could be used for anxiety and depression. So she went back to school and got another bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences and then a master's degree in Oriental medicine. She thought she'd be working with anxiety and depression, but she put a small paragraph in her newsletter stating that Chinese medicine could help people with fertility problems. That helped launch her work infertility using Chinese medicine. For the past 20 years, she's been creating Chinese herbal formulas for women around the world to treat their fertility problems. Patricia is also part of the van life movement and has been a solo full-time nomad traveler in a converted van with solar on the roof and a mobile cell booster so that she can travel the backcountry of this continent. Hi, Patricia.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm really good. I'm sitting here on the edge of Lake, this must be Huron, in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And actually, the town I'm by is called Paradise. I didn't plan
Nice.
that.
That is awesome. So
Yes.
some people are going to be watching this, so they'll see the fact that you actually are in your van. For the people who are listening to
Yeah.
this on iTunes or SoundCloud, I just want people to know that you actually are doing this from your van, which is your mobile home, which we'll get into.
This is my only home. This is everything I own in the world is right here. I got rid of everything, and this is it. Yep.
That's awesome, and I definitely want to do a deep dive into that. But before we kind of get into your van life and what led you to be a mobile nomad Chinese medicine practitioner, talk to us like what led you to women's studies in psychology to begin with.
I was young, right? And I, way back then, and um, my parents were young when they had all seven kids, and it was chaotic, of course. And my dad thought he worked in the shop, at GM, and he thought, don't work in the shop. He taught us, don't work in the shop, have an interesting life. And so I started looking at what do I want? And I went to university. I went to Eastern Michigan University thinking that I would go into teaching people with learning disabilities, but then I fell into psychology, and of course I'm a woman, and so I was looking at all the women's stuff, and and that's how I got into it, just by accident. And so I just because it was interesting, that's how I started with psychology, and that was 100 years ago, right?
How did feminist studies inform your approach to psychology when you work with your clients?
Oh boy, working with women. I learned so much. In women's studies, you study history and you study literature and you study all aspects of what it means to be a woman in this day and age up till now, right? And so I was really saw a broader perspective on. I didn't even know anything about it, really. When you're just living, you don't realize. I think that's what's going on with Black Lives Matter right now too, right? Is suddenly we're becoming aware of all these places where where African Americans or blacks around the world have been put down or not allowed to really live a full life. And that's what it was for me when I studied women's studies and just studied all aspects of being a woman. So now I'm really aware. Now I had no idea that would even play a part now that I'm working with fertility.
Mm.
I mean, and with women all around the world right now, most of my patients are all over Africa,
Oh,
and
wow.
I see how they see fertility and getting pregnant. And I have a lot of people in Pakistan and India and just all over, and how they view themselves, which they don't realize has so much to do with society and how society, but it impacts their fertility. It impacts how I can even talk to them about what's going on with their bodies. And the stuff. Nobody comes to me first. They come to me after struggling so long to get pregnant. And so emotionally, oh my gosh, it's a big deal. So I have to work with that too.
Talk to us about how culture plays a role in women's physiology, and therefore in
Oh.
the way you work with them and find that you've discovered limits the reproductive capacities of your clients, or had until
Oh,
they saw
wow.
you.
Wow. It's so how they talk about fertility, how they talk about having a baby is different and what's expected of them. A lot of women in Africa and also like Pakistan, Uzbekistan, my patients there, having a baby is it defines their worth in life.
Mm.
It's not so true in the US, at least with younger people. It's not so obvious, but how it is in these other countries, it's very obvious. And then there's a lot of women in a lot of places in Africa where women have had their clitoris cut, and which was part of a tradition, and how and what happened out of that, how that impacts how they view their bodies. It's a big deal. It's they don't even know how to talk about it really. And I even had to learn over time to ask them about it. I didn't know to ask them about it. And I would say, though, that one thing that's true about women all over the world, including the United States, is how little they know about their bodies,
Mm.
how little they know about what their reproductive cycle is. Know it either, and they could. I mean, to have sex, men put their penis in a woman's vagina, right? And the vaginal discharge changes throughout the cycle. It becomes clear and slimy at ovulation. A man's in there. He could know this.
Mm.
He could know she's ovulating if we taught it, but it's somehow this secret. And actually, my mom knew nothing about it. She had 7 kids. She never knew about that until she heard me talking to a woman on the phone. And this is
Wow.
an obvious
Yeah.
thing, right? Obvious. And
Uh,
so how people relate to their bodies, I've been shocked. I had no idea this was how unrelated we are to our bodies
do you, yeah,
around the world.
are there any cultures that stand out to you as where men and women, but women who seem to be your client, are more in touch with their own, somatic self sense, including their sexuality and sensuality and things? Or are there a lot of deficits all over the world?
It's all over the
Yeah.
world. How they talk about it, is different. Like the women in the Caribbean, for instance, their passion is almost angry when they're talking about it. Oh, it's like this edge. Like I had to learn to understand, oh, they're not angry, this is just how they talk about it.
Hmm.
And then women in like Western Africa, the way they talk about it and how they relate to it is, feels like it's more, like they always call me Patricia, my dear.
Hmm.
Always, Patricia, my dear. And then we get into this very intimate conversation about it. right? Americans are more scientific about it, even though they're wrong most of the time. I'm like, let's back it up here, right? Let's back it up and let's just go over what a cycle is like. And but they're more scientific, and they believe their doctors more than anyone else, even though their doctors do not go over it. I'm so shocked. Yeah.
Do you see differences in the medicalization of reproduction, where some cultures extremely medicalize it, where others might do less so?
Well, the US, of course, is very medical. I
Yeah.
mean, they go to IVF, in vitro fertilization, and even with a donor egg, they go to that really fast. But now that's starting to happen more and more all over the world. I even had a patient in Ethiopia who had tried IVF 3 times
Mm,
before she called me, and that's in Ethiopia, which I wasn't
surprise.
expecting, right? And then she said, I just want to do it naturally. And I said, let's try it. And now I always go through all of their health history. I have to really know everything about them, their bodies, their emotional. I have to know everything about them because every formula is really customized for them. If they had asthma as a child, I need to know. I
Mm,
need to know their bodies. So this woman, after 3 um, failed IVF
mm.
cycles, she took the herbs for 3 months and she got pregnant.
Aw,
And
that's
then
good.
she ended up having twins.
Aw,
And then she sent me a ticket to Ethiopia to come and meet them.
oh, that's awesome.
And I was like, you are giving me a dream come true. And she said, you gave us ours. Now we're giving you yours. And I got to go to Kenya too. And they paid for the whole thing. Right. And really put the whole thing together for me.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yes. I feel like Africa is, even though I know there's 53 countries in Africa and it's very different, but I've worked with women all over Africa. I have to know even what they eat, right? And also, Africa, they hold their fertility longer than like Americans. And if they come to the US, the more they eat American food, the more their fertility goes down, just like Americans. And the oldest woman I ever helped get pregnant was 51. And
Wow.
that was an African woman. If a woman 51 calls me, I have to go over what is menopause, right? But when she was telling me about her, and she was in Africa, and I'm like, what do you eat and all of that, I thought, oh my gosh, it might work. Let's try
Mhm.
it. And sure enough, now she's my only one that old. But I've had a lot of women in their late 40s.
Using Chinese medicine as your model or your map of reality when you work with these ladies, can you talk about how that is different than most Western trained people might approach, getting pregnant, conception, pregnancy, and birth? Because I heard you mention diet as an example,
Oh
and
yeah.
in America, most doctors have very, very, very little training in nutrition.
None. They have none.
I know, I was trying to
They
be
have
nice.
none. Right. They don't even have one class in nutrition, right?
And what they learn is
Yes.
probably very conventional USDA food pyramid plate
Yes, and that paid for that
backwards.
study to be
Yeah,
conducted. Yeah, I
yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Right. Yeah,
So,
right.
so talk to me about the Chinese
Yeah.
models, because you also,
Okay,
besides
so
nutrition, also you mentioned like if a lady had asthma when she was a kid, that plays a role in
yeah,
how you think about it.
I have to look at how her body works, right? I want her body, her husband's too. I work with men too, but more
Good.
women than men. And but I have to see what kind of balance her body's in every way. So with Western medicine, they're coming in and they'll give you drugs to make you ovulate. They'll give you drugs to do whatever they want to happen on their timing, right? But that's so different. I need to get their body to do what it should on its own. And so that's why I have to know their body so well. And I always, I have to find out about their cycle, but I also have to know about what color's the blood, what's the digestion like. And then I have them fill out a really long form after I've talked to them for at least an hour. And then I'm looking also, is this internal or external? Is this imbalance internal or external? Is it deficiency or excess? Is it yin? Is it yang? Is it, and so all of those ways the body works is very different than what we're looking at in Western medicine. We're looking at it like it's a mechanical thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so once I look at how the whole body works like that, then I, our bodies are made up of food, water, and air. That's the only thing that goes into us, right? And so what you eat is a big deal. And how you breathe and what water is like. So when I'm looking at, and I usually, because I'm working with fertility, it's so much about blood. I need blood to move. And I need it to move to those tiny little vessels in the reproductive system. And the body wants, if there's any problem in the body wants to prevent you from having a baby, right? So that to keep the species going, keep that individual organism alive. So the first thing it does is stop that blood going to the reproductive system. And this is true in men and women. Men have some other complications, like right now, their fertility, their sperm count is going down, mainly due to all the toxins in our fish. We have every single water body now has toxins in it. And the fish, even if it's wild caught, even if it's organic, it doesn't matter. Our water's so bad. And all those toxins are settling in men's reproductive system. And same, not as much in women as men, but that's true. So when I'm looking at food, I'm looking at all of that too. And because I also have a degree in biomedical sciences and how the body works, I can't just go by Chinese medicine.
Nice.
So I have to go, I read research all the time. And when I'm working with diet and trying to change diet, if I knew how to change diet easily, I'd be very rich and probably on a yacht, right? And so I really I give them, my patients, I give them a whole list of videos I want them to read, research I want them to see, to convince them, please do this, do what I tell you to do.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned men as well, and
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate here in the West, or at least in the States, except for sperm, men are not really thought much of in terms of the role they play in terms of conception, pregnancy, and birth. Can you speak just a little bit about why men play a role in your mind, the way you work with a couple?
I need them. I will not be successful without them. And I'm only successful if there's a little baby at the end,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes 50%. It's 50%. We have to have the sperm. Now in Western medicine, they don't look at it as much, right? Because they can have men give a sample, and then they just take out the one good one and
Yeah.
just put it next to that one egg, and they're fine. Well, there's a man in one ejaculation, it's 16 to 60 million sperm. Why it takes that many to get one to swim that 12-hour journey up to where the waiting egg is. So we need, there's no getting around, we need men. I'm sorry. For what I'm doing, we need men.
But can you also speak to like the health of the health of the man in his totality will reflect the strength of the sperm? No.
Oh my gosh, yes, the men have to be healthy. It takes 3 months for a sperm to grow and develop. What you do today will affect your sperm 3 months from today. So what you eat, if you even have if you even have a cold, it'll affect your sperm. If you're depressed, it'll affect your sperm. In Chinese medicine, we have a concept, we talk about the heart, but it's not exactly the heart like the organ. It's really like the heart that falls in love. And there's a whole class of herbs that they say it nourishes the heart to calm the spirit. And if you need those herbs, it's going to affect your heart, the organ. But there's so much to what the heart is before it ever affects the organ. And that's true of men. To get that sperm, it's tiny. It's one cell with a little tail at the end. We need it all to work, and it takes 12 hours for that little thing to swim to where that egg is. So and millions in one ejaculation. That's how much, how tender it is, right? How you need so many because most of them will not make it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you bring up the heart, and in Chinese medicine, you acknowledge that it's much more than just the organ. But even in the West, in medical science, the heart is unfortunately, for the most part, just seen as a pump. And in fact, it's an endocrine organ. It's a
Yeah.
brain. It has an influence on the brain and the head. So
It's
even,
everything. I'm sorry. If it's not working, we'll have no blood
yeah,
getting nothing.
yeah,
It's a huge, well, we can't say it's everything, but it is.
it's a lot. Yeah, yeah. So you want healthy men. You obviously you want a woman to be as healthy, maximizing her health as possible. One of the things you said is diet. So good, clean food, clean water. What are the things you work with women on to improve the likelihood of conception and then a healthy pregnancy and birth?
Let me go through food a little bit first.
Please,
I just
please.
have a couple things. I
Sure.
won't go into all the details, but okay. So, I want my women, men too, but it's obvious, more obvious in women, is that they need to eat cooked dark green leafy vegetables every day. And I recommend about 2 cups. It doesn't have to be all at one time. And I usually say cook a big pot of it so that you don't have to think about it, just eat it. Right. And so 2 cups of cooked dark green leafies, spinach, kale, collard greens, cabbage, broccoli, those greens. And it has to be, you can have them not cooked, but that doesn't count. I need them cooked. And then sprinkle 2 teaspoons of ground flaxseed on top and a little bit of lemon or lime juice. That combination creates the heme molecule that the body turns into blood.
Mm.
It also, that combination creates folate that the body turns into folic acid, and in a way that the body can use it. And when women are pregnant or trying to get pregnant, doctors will recommend they take prenatal vitamins. And what a prenatal vitamin is a regular vitamin with extra folic acid in it, in a form that the body can't use, right? But that combination, that vitamin C is coming in with that, the lemon or lime juice, and then that got the good oils in that flaxseed, in a way the body can use it so that it'll really create with the greens. That combination is what's so important to create the heme molecule. And so I get them, definitely they have to eat that. And then I want, with women especially, absolutely no dairy products.
Mm.
And the reason on that is that, it's milk, that is meant for cows. And it's meant to grow a cow from a calf from 100 pounds to 600 pounds in 1 year. And it also it's coming from a cow that just had a baby, and so the estrogen is too high,
Oh,
and
wow.
that
Okay.
estrogen will cause fibroids. It will cause endometriosis. It causes too many problems. So I want that out. I want that out. And I want them to get their protein mainly from beans and legumes: black
It,
beans, kidney beans, garbanzo beans, black-eyed peas, lentils.
is the dairy restriction specific to women who want to get pregnant, or is that a recommendation you have for all women at all
I
times?
would recommend that to all women. I can't think of any woman that could tolerate the amount of estrogen in there. Um, because think of it, it's a cow that just had a baby. That's why she has milk, right? And even women who just had a baby are high in estrogen, and they're finding that there's too much estrogen in dairy products for women. And so it's not about the high fat, right? Which it is high in fat, right? Which can slow the blood from moving, but it's the estrogen that I'm worried about for my patients.
The
Is
the
Yeah.
mercury and other toxic chemicals or things that might be in fish aside, if you could find a good source, or do fish play a role in the diet you recommend for women, or fish
Um,
eggs?
I used to say it was okay, but
Mhm.
then when the study came out about how it's now in all of our fish,
Everything. Mm.
it's in all of our fish. Our waters are
So
a
polluted.
mess.
Yeah.
Yes. And because just maybe it's not, I don't know if it's I mean all of my women are having problems getting pregnant, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
And so any sensitivity to it, I have to get rid of anything that's going to be a problem. And I didn't used to um, say anything about diet when I first started, and then I read the China study because it's China and I'm Chinese medicine, right? I read that and I'm like, what? And then I started incorporating the information from the China study and then it was like night and day. And so I mean, I'm seeing women get pregnant. I'm seeing that change so fast that now I cannot avoid saying something about looking at the diet. And a lot of people are giving me information on their phone. They're filling out my long form on their phone, and I ask them what they eat. And if they tend to like salty food versus sweet food, that tells me something about their imbalances too.
Right.
Like it
Right.
has to do with it's the kidneys, which in Chinese medicine controls cycles and rhythms in the body, and and if it's sweet, it's more about spleen. And so I have to look at that. And when they're filling out their form on their phone, I'll say, "What do you eat?" And they'll say, "Food." I want to kill them when they say that. I say, "I have your address. I'm coming to get you."
That's funny.
Yeah.
You mentioned protein. You mentioned legumes as a source of
Yeah.
protein. What do you think of like grass-fed beef or free-range chicken,
Well,
free-range eggs
because of
from free-range
no,
chicken?
because of what it's not about the pollutants that I'm concerned about. I the thing about beans and legumes is that it's higher in protein than any animal product, right? And it
Hmm.
has the fiber in it, and the fiber in it will help to reduce inflammation. And my patients, there's so much inflammation involved. So, and it also, so that fiber is good. It also has what's considered a two meal effect where when you eat the beans or legumes at one meal, it keeps the blood sugar regulated for two. And when when you keep the blood sugar regulated, which is a hormone, it will help to control the other hormones. So that's why I don't care about the toxins. Oh, and there's also no fat in them, right? No fat in beans and legumes. And so that fat usually with products you eat it and it goes into the bloodstream. And yes, our body can get rid of it. And then it's time for lunch. We do it again and again. I can't have that. I need the blood going to those tiny, tiny little vessels for my kind of patients. I need,
How about when they're
yeah.
actually pregnant? Would you encourage a different type of diet than wanting to get pregnant?
It depends on the person and what their
Okay.
body's like,
Okay.
right? If there's somebody like polycystic ovarian syndrome, that's somebody who is going to become diabetic if they don't change their diet. And if they have a daughter, she probably will be too. And so if I change their diet and get rid of all that stuff, they'll drop their weight, which they all have, and then their daughter will eat like she does, like we all do, eat like our mom, and then she doesn't have to have that problem. So it really depends on the person on what I recommend. And
Uh,
normally too, once they're pregnant, I want them off herbs. I don't want them on herbs once they're pregnant. I want their body to be doing what it should on its own, not having to take um, herbs, and I have to know every if they take any medication at all, they have to stop taking my herbs, call me, let me know what they're doing, and then I have to make sure there's no drug herb interactions.
I
These
see.
herbs really are potent. It's not We're not playing around.
So you use dietary interventions, you use herbal interventions. You also work
Hmm.
with the husband or the man.
Yeah.
Are there any
And I want
mind?
him to get his sperm checked too.
Okay.
I want him to get his sperm checked, even if he doesn't think he's got a problem or never did. Most of the time, the doctor doesn't even check him, right? And I've learned that I've got the woman already. Oh shoot, the sperm is low, right? And now it's 3 months to get that sperm up. So I have them just go on Amazon and put in their at-home sperm test and check it at home, so we
Oh,
don't have to worry about it.
okay. Are there any mind-body practices, meditation, movement practices for stress management, for blood flow activities that you recommend to complement the herbs and the dietary changes?
I want them to at least to walk, right?
Mm.
At the very least, right? I need them to walk. And if they can walk for at least 15 minutes, just walk for 15 minutes after 2 meals a day. I'm not saying you have to do any stressing out, just walk, right? And if you can walk with no shoes on, oh, on the earth with no shoes, ideal, right? Ideal.
Is that for grounding
And
purposes?
yes, it's grounding, right?
Okay.
It's grounding. And so and they notice it right away and they feel like they think that I remember this as a kid, they say, but we know it's grounding, right? And if they're in some big city, it's harder, right? It's harder in the winter. And but just walk at the very least. If they don't do yoga, oh, of course, I love it if they do, of course, right? And if they're struggling, even with the herbs, I'll look it up for them because again, I have their address, right? I'll look up what's going on in their area. I'm telling you, I can figure that out even if they're in Brazil, and I
Mm.
have. And I've gotten them to be able to do it. There's even a yoga class in Antarctica. I figured that out too.
Well, that's cool. That's good to know. That's funny.
Yeah, was for my patient.
So you do what you do with the women all across the globe in terms of fertility work from your van.
I
You,
do.
you're a nomad. How did you go from New York, a practice in New York, to a nomad?
What happened was I was just what I was I because I've traveled all over the world, right? 42 countries. And as long as I have internet and phone, I'm good. And I was all over the South Pacific. But then I had a dog, not the one I currently had, but I had a dog named Baby Girl who was blind and deaf. Now you can't go off. She was old, 20. She was 20.
Wow.
And you can't just go off and leave a blind deaf dog with a friend to take care of, right? And so I thought my traveling days are over. And then I was watching YouTube and it said something like vegan in a van, Google and its infinite wisdom gives me that video. And so I'm like, what the heck is that? And she was living in her van. And I'm like, what? And then I started watching other ones and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can travel with my dog, right? And so I started figuring this out. And from the day that I got that video till I was in my van with solar on the roof, I have 200 watts on the roof. I have two AGM batteries under my bed. I have a cell booster that will connect me to the internet anywhere, right? I also have a directional antenna if I need it, if I'm really far out. So it took me 1 year from the time I watched that till I was traveling. And the whole idea of getting rid of everything and only owning what I actually need. I only need 1 gallon of water a day for everything. Yes, I can do that, including washing, my dog, doing my dishes. Oh, I feel like I'm not a problem with the planet. I'm part of the solution.
how did you, like, in that year that you transitioned, went from
Yeah.
whatever to van life, what was the psychological shifts for you as you're like, oh, getting rid of stuff, recognizing I don't need that, I don't need this, I don't need this,
Well,
moving towards a,
first, what I did is I put everything. I didn't know that I didn't need, right?
huh?
And I got rid of stuff that I knew it was obvious, and then I put everything in storage. Right? I had storage. And then I was on the road for a year and I never missed one thing. Not one. Not one thing. And I thought, what? I didn't need. And so then I decided to get rid of it. And the only thing that was really hard is I had a vertebrae from a whale that
Huh.
I had found in California when the waves went out, and there was this vertebrae that I had transferred across the country. And I thought, what can I do with that? And I thought, and so I thought I would put it in, bury it on the where only students could come. They would find it and it would be like, what? A whale? And then I put up a picture of my, I put up the stuff, and a friend said, I want that whale vertebrae. And I said, you can keep it, it's yours. But if it ever comes a time you don't care about it anymore, then contact me and I'll take it back. But so I don't need anything. And I've even gotten rid of stuff that I thought I needed in my van. I thought I needed more clothes than I do. You don't need that much.
All right, so I'm gonna have to ask you the basic questions that I'm sure everyone's like, oh, how do you live in a van? So bathroom, shower, and where do you park?
Okay, bathroom. I have a porta potty. Now, there's different ways you do it, right? Like some full timers they'll poop in one bag and pee in a bottle and all that. And I tested myself, and at my age, I am not figuring out, what do I have to pee? Do I have to poop? No, I just want to go. And so I did a porta potty, which is a 2.5 gallon one. And the reason I even use that size is because 1 gallon of water weighs 8.5 pounds. I didn't want a big old one that I got to drag somewhere that
Mm.
weighs so much. And I can handle 15 pounds of water. And I just dump it at, I can dump mine in. It's not a big deal. It's 2.5 gallons. So that's bathroom. And then shower, you can shower at any, where the truckers go,
Mm.
right? Or some people use like Planet Fitness, right? You get Planet Fit. You don't need showers as often as you thought you did. There's also a guy there. So it's not exactly like you're on the road alone, right? And there's a guy who used to be a some sort of an engineer, and he developed is called the 1 hour shower, and use 1 gallon of water, and it recycles itself and cleans it.
Okay, you're back. Yeah.
Okay,
So
I don't know if that was me or what.
restate
Okay,
about the
whoops,
shower,
are you
though.
there again?
Restate about the
Okay,
shower.
so yes, so go on YouTube and just put in there 1 hour shower, and you're going to see the engineer that developed a shower for us vanners, who it'll recycle a gallon of water over and over and clean it, and it's really simple. So that's an easy way to take a shower too.
And so
Just Google 1 hour. I mean, yeah,
where do you park? Like at the end of the day,
I'm back. Are you?
you're back. Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if that's me getting I don't know. Maybe that's me. So where you park is simple, easy. you start out going on freecampsites.net. And when you go on freecampsites.net, you'll put in where you're going, plan your trip, and you'll see, like, because I'm not going to pay for it all the time, right? Otherwise, you're stuck in like a campground. Oh my God, who wants to be in a campground, right? And like where I'm at, we call it boondocking, right? Where you're out in the boondocks. And if you have, internet and your solar, you don't need all that stuff and be stuck in a campground. But so when you're starting out learning how to do it, freecampsites.net is sort of your Bible. And or you can go to Campendium. And if you're outside of the US, it's iOverlander. You can even find where to go all over the world,
Nice.
right? And yes, because we're all over the world. But you start there and then you learn. And as a woman, I'm a 65-year-old woman, a solo woman traveler, right? So I need to keep things safe
Yeah.
too. And so I've learned my way to keep things safe and what I'm looking for. And as a woman, we're more tuned into our environment than anyone. One of the things, speaking of environment, whoops, is it going to go? Oh, no, that's okay. So it's the thing that I've learned the most from camping um, is I had no idea that you can fall in love with the earth and the sky. You honestly can. That same in love feeling you feel for, that you're all in love, it happens to you, to the earth and the sky. Honest. I had no idea it was even a thing. It is.
That's awesome.
It
So I
is.
have to imagine, besides spending a lot of time out in nature and natural surroundings, you've also met a lot of people in the same lifestyle as you around the world.
There's the place where you start out, there's a big gathering called uh oh, we're not, what are we called? The Rubber Tramp Rendezvous. The Rubber Tramp Rendezvous. Last year I think there were 10,000 nomads there. And that happens in Arizona in January. And then you meet people that way. You have to find your people, right? Not all, you got to find your people that you really resonate with your people. And so going to the Rubber Tramp Rendezvous is a good place to start. And there's a woman's Rubber Tramp Rendezvous. And then there's sort of an offshoot of it that's called, so we call it the Rendezvous. And then there's one called the Party R, where they party a little more, karaoke and all that kind of stuff that happens too. So you connect up with people. And then when summer comes, everybody disperses around the country.
You're back.
I don't know if that's me or you. Probably me. I am out in the middle of East Bumblefuck. Sorry. But anyways, so we disperse after, in the summer and everybody goes off. And that's what but you meet up when you want to meet up.
So, what would you say you've learned about yourself as a van life nomad that you didn't know about yourself prior to hitting the road?
I didn't know that I would fall in love with the earth and the sky. That
Nice,
was my first biggie. I
nice.
also I didn't realize I study so much. I know I have a lot of degrees, right? And I always thought it was for this or for that, right? But I've also been working on another bachelor's through Washington State University on geology
Oh
because I
wow,
want to know what's this? Why is this like this? Right.
very cool.
And so that's, yes. And now you can you can study all over the world. You can, you can study. Yeah.
Right,
And I do. I
nice.
didn't know that about myself.
How did Chinese medicine change how you thought about yourself?
I started seeing myself, we start looking at the ancestors too. right? And how that affects, not like biologically like we do in the West, right? But all the way back. I even want to put together I'm going to be going to Mexico, and I want to put together a retreat where I needle all the ancient ancestral points, and then the next day we look at dreams. What dreams come out of that, right? And that combination of the ancestors and the dreams. So I see myself, I think through Chinese medicine and the combination, right, is I see that I'm a part of the world and what came before. And I do believe another world is possible, and that we can really have a world that works for us all. We can. And
Love
there's
that.
plenty of space. I know that.
So if
Yeah.
people want to learn more about your Chinese medicine in general, but your work with fertility in particular, how can they learn more about you and contact you?
Yeah, so they can just go on, just go to Fertility Formulas with an S at the end. Fertilityformulas.com is my website.
And I know
Or
you go ahead.
or you can send me an email at Patricia@Fertility Formulas.
Cool. I'll make sure to include that in the show notes.
Yeah,
And I know you want to do a poem,
I do.
but before you do, I just want to do a shout out to Gail, who
Oh,
introduced
hi,
us.
Gail.
So I'll turn it over to you to close us out with a poem.
Okay, here's my poem, and I learned this just because I wanted to memorize something, and this was 35 years ago. Little did I know I'd have to memorize 350 points in the ear alone for acupuncture, right? But okay, so this is the poem. It's from Letters to the Young Poet by Rainier Maria Rilke, and again, I say this every single day. It's but poems amount to so little when one writes them young. One ought wait and gather sense and sweetness a whole life long, and a long life if possible. And then, quite at the end, one might perhaps write 10 lines that are good. For poems are not, as people imagine, simply emotions. Those one has early enough. They are experiences. For the sake of a single poem, one must see many cities, men, and things. One must understand the animals. One must feel how birds fly and know the gesture in which the little flower makes. One must be able to think back to roads in unknown regions, to unexpected meetings and partings one had long seen coming, to days of childhood still unexplained, to parents who one had to hurt when they brought one some joy and one could not grasp it. It was a joy meant for someone else. To childhood illnesses that so strangely begin such a number of grave and profound transformations. To nights of travel that rushed along and flew with all the stars. To days in rooms withdrawn and quiet, to mornings by the ocean, to the ocean itself, to all oceans. But it's not yet enough to think of all this. One must have memories of many nights of love, none of which were like the others, of screams of women in labor, of the light, white, sleeping women in childbed, closing again. One must have sat beside the dying, sat beside the dead in the room with the open window and the fitful noises. But it's not yet enough to have memories. One must be able to forget them when they are many, and then have the great patience to wait until they come again. For it's not the memories themselves, not until they've turned to the blood within us, glance and gesture, nameless and no longer to be distinguished from ourselves. Only then can it happen, in the most rarest of hour, the first words of a poem arises from the mist and goes forth from it. That's it.
Thank you, Patricia.
That's
Enjoy.
good, right?
Yeah, it's very good. I appreciate that.
You're
Nice,
welcome.
nice way to end our conversation.
Exactly, right?
Well, I wish you much success in assisting women getting pregnant, and enjoy your travels and stay safe.
Hey, when you're looking for how to do the van life,
Hmm?
be sure to check out Creativity RV on YouTube.
Will do. Thank you,
Okay?
Patricia. Great to talk
You're
to you.
welcome. We're good? Okay.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.